Hello, everyone. I'm going to be giving this brief, wonderful talk here on Ionic. So, Ionic gives you this a awesome platform for being able to build cross-platform apps, and hopefully, my goal, we'll see how it goes, is to build our basic app and then deploy it so that all of us in the room here can download it and play with it within 10 minutes. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so Ionic. A little bit about myself. I'm an iOS dev that happens to dabble. I just love technology, and so I've always wanted to kind of see what else is out there. So kind of started playing with Angular and Ionic, and just decided to really kind of see what it can do. And within this overview here, we're going to essentially go over native versus hybrid apps, introduction to Ionic, run over some of the UI components, the command line interface, and then do a demo. So for most folks, that question is, hey, I want to build an app. How do I go about doing this? Well, naturally, you usually kind of have two options. There's the native option, which generally, unless you have a very extensive budget and lots of developers, it's a little bit more, it's out of reach for some folks because you probably want to go on the two major platforms, which is Android and iOS, and maybe you only know iOS, or maybe you only know Android. So what platforms like Ionic do is let you write essentially one code base and deploy to multiple platforms with one code. So proficiency in each platform is required, entirely separate code bases, as I said, timely and expensive development when you're doing multiple platforms, and diminishing returns. With the hybrid apps, essentially you're building HTML5 that acts like a native web wrapped in a native layer. So you have direct access to native APIs using things like Cordova or PhoneGap. If you're already familiar with web development, it's like pretty much right up your alley, as we'll see here. And one of the things, previous conversations have always been like, oh man, web apps, they're slow, they suck. Yeah, that used to be the case when devices were slower and suckier. Now we have devices that are much faster that allow the cross-platform apps to kind of stand up there. They're not necessarily 100% up there, but they're getting close. Here's a couple of just specs here just on what things used to be like 7, 10 years ago even. And now we have, of course, even with iPhone 7, 7 Plus, much faster processors, more RAM, and even the web standards have improved, which greatly help folks who are trying to build cross-platform apps. So native SDKs are, of course, great. Here's a screenshot of Xcode where you can essentially have your views, your navigation, your stack history, all kinds of information necessary for building apps, which is essentially what you get here. But with Cordova or Ionic, you essentially get an app that's wrapped in somewhat of a web view layer. So your app's built kind of like a website in a way that lets you do things without necessarily needing to know native code. Introduction to Ionic. So what's cool about Ionic? Uses the web technologies you already know and love. HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So if you know this, you, my friend, can build a mobile app. Superpowered by Angular, which is also awesome because we just watched multiple Angular talks. So now we know HTML, we know JavaScript, we know CSS, and now we know Angular. So we're really, really empowered to build these apps. Of course, we use Sass as well, as was talked about in previous talks. How does it all come together? Well, essentially you have your app that is kind of packaged together, like essentially we have Ionic, Angular layer, a WebView layer, and a native layer. So that's essentially everything that comes together to build this app that we're going to get here later on. Beauties of Ionic, you get platform continuity. So when we build a demo here, one of the things we'll see is that on the left-hand side, we have the sort of layout that you would traditionally see in an iOS app, and then you have the layout that you'd see in an Android app. And you get all of this for free 99. It is nothing you have to do. Once you build the app, it gives this to you essentially. So very cool and very good way of being able to kind of have a quick snapshot of what my app looks like. Even if I'm necessarily targeting iOS, I can kind of get an idea of what it would look like on an Android device. Here is a kind of brief little demo here of just kind of with complex lists. This is a directive that, of course, as we've seen before with the previous demos, we can use directives such as ngRepeat to essentially create a list of information, similar to, if you're familiar with iOS, iOS would use a table view, Android would use a list view. And you can get a lot of easy information or really quick prototypes up just by implementing just a small bit of code, as you can see here in this small little list. I can do things like reorder my list, or just by grabbing things just like that, and all of this with very little code. And trust me, it would take more than this code to write it natively. So really big help. You get items such as collection repeat to be able to repeat data in what's similar to iOS's collection views. You also have other components such as side menus, action sheets, modals, pull to refresh, which are most of your kind of common components that you naturally see in mobile apps. It's MIT licensed, free to use, so you can use it free. Ionic comes with what we call Ionicons, which are a set of icons that you can pretty much use in your app without having to import an actual asset. Very similar to, Font Awesome. That you could use to essentially import icons within your app, and you will see later on how easy it is to be able to use these different icons within our app. Ionic also has a CLI, okay? CLI that you have for installing apps real quick, so you can use npm install -g Ionic Cordova, and that essentially will create your app for you. Let me breeze through this. Chromium is essentially used within most of these devices. I'm kind of going to breeze through some of this. Ionic View is essentially you can use Ionic View as your test store to push out a prototype build. So once I load an app on Ionic View, I can then provide a user a ID of that app, and you can essentially go there, and it doesn't actually install it on your phone, so it actually plays the app within the Ionic View app, but it gives it a very, very easy way of prototyping and getting your apps into the hands of users without necessarily going through like a full build like TestFlight or something like that. Also have Ionic Creator, that's very similar to like a WordPress sort of platform of being able to create your app using a tool as opposed to writing code. So if you know no code, Ionic Creator is for you. Community information, getting started with Ionic, and I'll do a brief demo. So brief demo, how do we go about creating an app? Wow, I probably need to make this bigger. And I'm gonna clear out of here, and I'm going to Command plus. All right, so if I wanna create an app, first thing I would do, okay, we'll do that. So first thing I would do is I would change directory to like some folder whatever folder I want to be in. Let's say my desktop. And I'll create some directory called Ionic Test or something like that. I don't know. And we'll CD into that. And from here, once you, oh, I forgot to mention that. So if you want to use an Ionic, you want to have Node.js installed because you're going to need Node.js to install packages and do so and use the command line interface, so on and so forth. So with that piece out of the way. So if I want to start an Ionic app, very easy. I can say Ionic start. Well, let's just say, what the heck do you do? Even if you know nothing, you can type in Ionic and the CLI will help you. So it's just a matter of kind of knowing where to get the information, not necessarily knowing the information. So I could see here if I use start will create a new project for me, so I can say Ionic start. I don't know what to put after that, so let's just go with help. And I can say Ionic start, and it gives me a couple of lists of things that I can do, such as the name of my project. So for the sake of time, I'm going to create Ionic start a demo app. And after demo app, I'm just going to create what's called a tabs application, which is essentially a template that's going to give me a basic app with tabs already in it. So once I do that, I hit enter. It's going to download some information. Now, essentially, we're going out to the web and we're grabbing all of the necessary information that we need to build and package this product. Once we get that built, then we will be able to launch it within our browser and view a quick demo of it. And then from there, we can also do things such as run it on our device if we wanted to kind of test it on our device, and also prepare it to be deployed to Ionic View if we want to, let's say, share our app with some folks. So I think this is just about done here. And if it finishes within the next 5 seconds, as it did, we can do things here. It's asking me a wonderful question. It's saying, hey, do you want to link this to your dashboard so you can use this with Ionic View? I'd like to say yes, because we want to deploy this. And by doing that, it gives me the ability to come here into a dashboard and create a new app. So I can just call this the iHeart Demo app and create an app. And by doing that, it's going to give me a wonderful ID here. And I can now use this ID to link this to my app. So I can say Ionic link, and that's not what I wanted. Ionic link, and let's copy this guy and paste that guy. You're right. I should have CD'd into my directory because it created a new project for me. So if I hit LS, I can see that I have a demo app directory. I will CD into that directory and then run my wonderful Ionic link. Now it's linking my wonderful app it's linking the local app that I have on my project to my Ionic View account online. Now I want to do something with this project, such as publish it. I believe I can type Ionic publish from here, and that was not the command. But what I can do is do Ionic upload, and that, my friends, will upload the app in question. While it's in the process of doing that, I am also going to give you guys a quick little view of this app so we can kind of see what it's going to look like. And it looks like it's already done, actually. So with that being said, I am actually going to run Ionic Serve. And what Ionic Serve is going to do is create a temporary web server here, as we've seen from the other guests, that will essentially get me a means of seeing my app within my browser here. So once my computer decides to load here, we'll see that. And here I have my app that looks kind of like a website, but I want to see what it looks like from a mobile perspective. So what I'm going to do is close out of Safari, because we don't want that. We're going to use Chrome. And, and from here, what I'm going to do is use Ionic Lab. And that's not right here, Ionic Lab. And what Ionic Lab is going to do is essentially build for me my project, or give me some sort of preview of this tab project that I just created in both iOS and Android. And so here I can kind of see that there's some subtle differences with the way the title is laid out, the different buttons. so on and so forth. And if I wanted to have any sort of idea of what this project would look like, okay, so I'm negative. But that's it. So if you guys wanted to kind of check this app out, if you go to the Ionic View if you download the Ionic View app, I can give you the code necessary to actually see the app, and it is going to be this 223B, which no one can see. But if you wanted to just get a demo of it, 223, and what I can't see. Yeah, I'll link it in the meetup, and you could download it and essentially kind of see a quick rundown of the app. It's the very basic app that we just loaded, but within 10 minutes, I built a mobile app, deployed it for multiple people to check, and I didn't write not one line of code.